What's up, people? Can you hear me and can you see me? If you can see me and if you can hear me, give me a what's up, give me a hi, so I know technically we are good to go. You can hear me? Shiv Karthik, Santosh Lenka, you send me a message. I'll try and reply today. Okay. Aditya, Shiva, Leon, Ashley, uh, Mustansir, Marky, the Story Pie, Hassan. How you guys doing? Good to see you guys. So, are you guys all game artists? Tell me about yourself. Tell me which city you're from. Tell me a little bit about yourself. My trip was good, thank you. I'm all brown, from the sun in Goa. Good to see you guys. Rayuma, Parthu Roy, Rishikesh, Keshav Misra. Good to see you guys. So today is a very special day. I've been thinking for a long time, what can I do to help my YouTube audience, my Instagram audience actually get a good idea about game art, because a lot of people are confused about what game art really is. They have done some animation courses, etc., and they don't know what game art really is, right? What does it mean to actually build art for video games? What is the process? How do you start? What everything happens? So what we are doing today is a very special day. I'm not going to talk too much, and I'm going to hand it over to our lead mentor, Afiat. Here he is.
Hello, hello. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Hello,
It's
everyone.
nice
So
to
this
be
is
here.
it's great to have you, Afiat. Thank you for coming this Sunday morning. And so Afiat is our lead mentor. He has like 10 years of experience in game industry. He's a very accomplished. He's like good at 2D. He's good at 3D. Like he's kind of like really an all-rounder, and he's our lead art mentor. And today, what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually create game art from scratch, and it is going to be a demo class. And you're most welcome to kind of ask questions, and at the end, if there is some time, maybe he can, if there is time, maybe he can answer your doubts. Okay. Also, everybody, first thing I want to say is to everyone here, hit that subscribe button right now, because we're going to be doing a lot of cool stuff. Okay. We're going to try and do a live event every week in which we're going to be talking about game design, game programming, game art. We are even thinking, if you want, I'm even thinking that our Fiat can actually do a call with people to give them feedback on their portfolio. A lot of you have portfolios and say, Rahul, can you look at my portfolio? Give me feedback. So we're actually planning a call which you guys can submit your portfolios, and the art mentors can actually give you feedback on your portfolios. Okay. So with that, Afiat, are you there? Okay.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Awesome. So with that, let's get started with our art demo class. I'm going to remove myself from the stage, and I'm going to hand you guys all over to Afiat. So I'll see you later.
All right. So before we start, I'll just like to apologize because my health is not too well these days. The weather in Mumbai is very funny, so I might be looking a little dull because I am sort of sick right now. So today, what we're going to do is I have prepared concept art for one of the game projects that I was working on. So the concept art is there. Let me just show that to you guys. So I hope you can. I have to present my screen, correct? Wait a second. Yes. So I'm hoping you guys can see my screen. Yeah. So this is the concept art. These are the some weapon concept art that I did for one project not too long ago. And now we're going to take this concept art. I'm going to make a 3D model out of this, and then I'm going to unwrap it and texture it. I'll try to finish all within the hour, and then I'll call a guest. I'll call the Unity Unreal guy, and he will actually take the model inside of the game engine, so you can see that model and how the player can sort of move around with the sword and strike with the sword inside of the software, right? So um, once again, before we have to wrap it up, we have to wrap this up between an hour, right? So I'm not going to go into too much of detail. I'm not going to go into hyper realism. This is going to be a relatively low poly 3D model with a hand painted style. Okay, and I'll guide you more. I'll tell you more as I do it. So let's get started. Let me just also open up the YouTube live so I can see any comments, any doubts if there are any.
After you can do that. On your right side, you'll have comments, banners, brand. So if you just go to the comments on the right side, you can see all the comments.
Excellent, excellent,
You don't
excellent.
have to open it
Nice,
separately. StreamYard is awesome.
nice. It is, it is. This is very handy. This is very handy. So yeah, this is my Blender default. If you're wondering why I don't get the default cube, is because in Blender you can actually change your default scene. A lot of people don't know that. So I prefer to start with something like this. I'll just delete everything for now, and I'll just import my reference image. Okay, you can simply drag and drop as well. So yeah, here we have the image. So out of these, I actually like the SWOT number 8. Out of all the 10 concepts that we have created over here, I like the number 8. So I'm going to go ahead with that. Um, Again, we don't have too much time, but I want to discuss a few different approaches that we have to sort of keep in mind while we are 3D modeling, right? So first approach, even in low poly modeling, there are like two three different ways. First is modeling with the help of NURBS or modeling with the help of curves, right? Second is modeling with the help of a plane, and third is modeling or starting with the block. So it's very similar. uh, it's not like these three approaches are very different, but the way it starts, some approaches are more faster than the others, right? And for something as simple as a sword, it's ideal for me if I start with a plane or with a curve or a vertex instead of a block, right? I'll try to show you all the three methods. I'll try to model this three times actually, and cover all the three methods. Let's see how. If it takes too long, then I will not do the other methods. Okay, let me just log this. Over here you have a button. You can bring this V or cursor looking option, and then you can turn this off. So now this object is not selectable. So now when you're modeling, you don't keep on clicking on the reference image. You don't keep on disturbing your reference image, right? When you're modeling, so you just press this button. So see, this is selectable right now, and if I click this is not selectable, right? Now I'll just bring a default cube or a plane or anything. It doesn't really matter, and I'll go to edit mode, and now I'll merge everything at the center. So what happens when I merge everything at the center is I get a single vertex. If I move it around, maybe you can see it. Are you able to see the vertex moving around? Right? So I have merged everything the mesh had inside of a one single vertex. And now I bring that vertex over here. Bring that vertex over here. And from now, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to trace the sword. It's very simple, really. After this video, even if you haven't touched Blender before, this will give you the confidence that yes, this is simple. I can do it. Why did not I try this before, right? So I press E for extrude. Remember that I'm in the edit mode and I'm in the vertex mode. Within edit mode, there are multiple modes like vertex, edge, and face. So I'm in the edit mode and in the vertex within the edit mode. And I press E. I've selected the vertex. It's very important that you select the vertex. If you have it deselected, nothing is going to work. You select the vertex and press E for extrude, right? And I just keep on tracing this sword. It's very simple, really. Now, as I am tracing the sword, I am being careful, I'm being mindful of one thing, is that I don't want to overdo it. So I'm only adding points wherever it's super necessary. I don't want to add too many points, but that will make my mesh high poly. Okay. Now, what does high poly, low poly mean? To know that, you need to know. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be looking at the camera because I have to look at my work screen, right? But what does high poly and low poly mean? So when you're working in 3D, there's something called a poly count. And to understand what a poly count is, you have to understand what a poly is, what a polygon is. So let me just talk about that really quick. So let's say I take this cube, right? This is a cube. Now, what is this cube made of? Or if I take a sphere along with the cube, let's take a sphere. What is this sphere made of, right? So these spheres and these cubes, they are made of small shapes. So see, this is one shape, this is one shape, this is another, this is another, this is another, right? Even if we go inside of a sphere, let's say I want to make this sphere very smooth, right? Now the sphere is really, really smooth. But if I zoom into it, if I zoom into it, I can see a lot of small shapes, right? One, two, three, four, five, six, right? So these faces are called polygons. Some faces are four-sided, like these squares, they are four-sided. It's also possible to have multiple sided faces. It's also possible to have three-sided faces, something like this, right? Three-sided faces are possible, four-sided faces are possible, five, six, seven. So these faces are called polygons. Now, what does low poly actually mean, right? So higher the number of polygons in a 3D model, the more heavier it is going to be, right? So inside of a game engine, what do you want is you want the least amount of polygons possible, and that is how game art is different from art that you make for movies, art that you make for animations or CGI, right? That is how it is different. Because if I'm making for a movie, my first priority is to make it as realistic as possible. For animation, for VFX, for CGI, any model that I'm making for CG, it has to be hyper realistic, right? That is the utmost focus. But in game, my priority is, yes, it should look pretty, but at the same time it should be super, super optimized. I don't want to use unnecessarily high a number of polygons. So I have to make a shape, let's say I have to make a face, but I have to make the face within a limit, within 3000 polygons, 2000 polygons. So my boss will give me a limit. So this is your budget, this is your limit. You have to make this model within 3000 polygons and make it look good. And it's a whole different challenge. It is almost like writing a story, right? So when you, if I tell you to tell a story to someone, there's a big story, like it's your life story. If I tell you to tell your life story to someone, and if I tell you that do it just within 1000 words, it's going to be very difficult. The more words you have, the more easier it is going to be to tell that story. So it's something like that. The more poly count you have, the more poly budget you have, it's easier to make the model. But when you have a very strict poly count, very strict poly budget, you have to do a lot of puzzle solving, and you have to make the 3D models in a very optimized manner, right? So I hope that clears out. I'm not going too much in depth with this. And if you're very new to these concepts, very new to 3D, you might even get a little confused. So let's get back to the sword, right? One more thing which I think I need to tell before I continue is, let's say, I told you this is a face, right? I told you this is a polygon. But what are the polygons made of? They are made of edges. So these lines, they are edges. So these lines come together to make a polygon. And what are these lines made of? They are made of vertices. So these dots or these points, they are called vertices. So two vertices come together to make a line or an edge, and an edge or a few edges come together to make a face, right? So when I say a face, I mean this entire structure, this entire structure. When I say an edge, I mean this line over here, right? And when I say a vertex, I mean a point. So what did we do over here is we started with a vertex, over here, and we kept on E for extrude. That means we kept on pulling the vertex to create a edge, create a line. And we're going to continue the same thing now. Now I'm going to press J to join or F to connect if the J doesn't work. And I have something like this. So this is what I have right now. You might not be able to see it very clearly. So I'm going to press F for fill. And now I think you can see it, right? Can everyone see this? Yeah. So I'll answer the doubts. Someone is asking why is Blender not used in the industry? Uh, Bugs are the only reason. Mm, okay, see, the reason for that, it's firstly, it's not true that Blender is not being used in the industry. If you're only looking at the top companies, if you're only looking at the AAA companies, right? But how many AAA companies are there really? If you look at the number of, let's say there's 1,000 gaming companies in India. Out of the 1,000, only 20-25 are going to be AAA, right? Most of them are going to be mid to small studios, startups, mid-level companies, right? And most of them are using Blender. So when people say Blender is not industry standard, Blender is not being in the industry, the AAA does not represent the entire industry, right? Firstly, so Blender is actually being used in the industry quite a lot. And with the newer versions of Blender, we don't have that many bugs, right? We don't have that many bugs. There's a few more reasons why it's not being used in the top companies. I will speak about that after the session, okay? I'll just use a mirror modifier really quickly to mirror what I'm doing, right? So this is the basic shape of the sword we get with the help of the mirror. Now what I want to do is I'm going to make everything into quads. Now if you look at this, this is an entire, we can call this a polygon, we can call this a face, but this is not a good face. So what you ideally want, what a good 3D model has, is most of the faces should be four-sided. If you have five-sided faces, if you have six or more sided faces, it is not good. It's not considered a good 3D model. So 3D modeling is a lot like problem solving. Firstly, all the faces that you're using to construct the model are supposed to be quads or four-sided faces most of the time. And then you have to think about how the loops or the topology is flowing. And then you also have to think about the poly budget. So it's a lot like, it's not just about creating the shape that you see, it's a lot about puzzle solving, if you can say. So now I'll just try and make all of this single face into quads, four-sided faces, right? So I have one here, two over here, and three over here. I have three vertices over here. So if I take the knife tool and I make a simple cut like this over here and press enter, then this becomes a quad. This becomes a four-sided face. One, two, three, four. So if you look at this face, now it has four sides. It has four sides, which is ideal for us. So we have to continue doing that until the entire structure is divided into small polygons, small faces, which are all four-sided. So one, two, three, and let's add one more over here. Four. So again, this one is also four-sided now. One, two, three, four. So I'll just keep on doing that. And now we have successfully divided the entire structure into four-sided quads, four-sided polygons, right? So how many do we have? One, two, three, four, five, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. We have 12 faces on this side, and once it gets mirrored, we'll have 12 on the another side, right? Because remember, this is only one side that we're speaking about right now. So let's actually come out now, adjust it a little bit. I think we need to adjust it a little bit more, something like this. Yes. Now remember, I have just made the blade of the sword and the handle of the sword. We still have to make the hilt and the guard of the sword. So um, think of it as, so when you're working in 3D, it's quite different than sketching. Mm, so you have to think about how the object is constructed. What are the different small, big, and medium parts that are constructing or that are making this object, right? So if we think about this sword, it has the components it has is the blade, then it has the handle, then it has the hilt, which is some design on the handle, beneath the handle, and then it has the guard, which are these sort of things, right? So these are the things that a sword is made of. Now you can definitely make the sword out of just one mesh. You can have one mesh. Now what does a mesh mean? uh, it's nothing too complex. Let's say let's say I have this object, right? I have this object, this is an object, then I duplicate this object, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift D to duplicate it once again, make it a little smaller, and then move it over here, then shift D once again and move it over here, and then shift D once again and sort of rotate it like this for 90 degree. So now these are all different objects, right? These are all different objects. But now let's merge them. I'm going to merge them, Control J, to make it a single object. So now this is a single object, right? Yeah. Let's do this similar thing. Let's try to create a similar shape with this cube, but now with modeling instead of, so this, the first approach that I showed you, it is called Lego modeling. It is something a person who is new to modeling does, right? Versus this method is actual modeling should be like, right? So I'm in the face mode. I'm pressing I for inset, and then I'm pressing I for inset once again over here, and then I'm pressing Alt E for extrude, right? So in both of these cases, both of these scenarios, I have a similar result, right? I have a similar looking result, but they are very different. This is one object, and this is also one object, but this is one mesh, while this is total of five different meshes. What does that mean? So let's go inside of this. Let's go inside of this and let's select. Okay, see, this is another mesh. This is another mesh. This is another mesh. So they're all different meshes while I'm in the edit mode. Versus when I look at this, it is one single mesh. So if I try to edit it, see what happens. If I try to edit, it's all connected. It's actually connected. Versus over here, it's not actually connected. See, right? So even if I have combined it, I have joined it, it is one single object. It's still not one single mesh. So why is that important? Why was all this important? Knowing what is the difference between an object and mesh, why is that important, right? It's because when you're doing a 3D model, when you're making a 3D model, you have an option. You can either make all the things connected to each other, one single mesh, or you can make the things disconnected in different parts. Sword, the blade is different, the handle is different, the guard is different, right? And there are pros and cons to both of these. हर किसी के फायदे नुकसान है. So it depends on what your aim is, what your, for example, if I make everything connected, let's say if I make the if I just drag the handle out of this, let's say I just drag the handle from over here, right? I can make the the guard of the sword, right? It's not too hard. I can make the guard of the sword if I drag the handle from out of here. So yeah, if I have not put a lot of details into it, I'll put the details in some time. But yes, I can make the handle just by dragging it out of here. So the what is the benefit of doing that? The benefit of doing this is that the poly count which is required, the amount of faces which are required, is reduced. That is the benefit. But what is the disadvantage of doing this, right? Is, let's say I want to change. My boss tells me that we want to change this word, right? We want to change this word. So if the handle of the guard is a different object, I can swap it very easily, right? Versus if it is connected and then I have to change it, then it's a lot of work for me. So there's pros and cons to every different approach over here. Okay. So these are some doubts. These are some things that I think you should know. Just showing modeling isn't enough. That's why I'm speaking about these things, taking my time. I'm just smoothing it out a little bit. Now over here, you see, I want to add this depth over here. I want to make this a curve, right? To make this a curve, I need a vertex over here. But what is that vertex costing me? The cost of having this curve over here is a loop that runs so long. And what does this loop do? It divides one, it divides all of these faces. So basically, जहाँ पे 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 faces used to be, now it's going to be 10 faces. So 10 faces is the cost that I'm paying to have this slight curve over here, right? So you have to think about all of these things when you're modeling. It's not worth having that curve if I'm paying the cost of 10 faces to have it, right? But there's a solution to that. So I'm just going to keep it like this. I'm going to merge it over here. So what that does is, now I have a triangle over here. I have a triangle, as you can see, but I don't have a loop that runs across the blade, across the length of the blade, right? Let's add one loop over here. Another over here. Yes. Just keep on extruding this. So previously I had shown you guys how do we extrude vertices, but now I'm clicking on the edges and extruding them. If I want this small shape over here, I can have it something like this. Yeah. So overall, now I have the shape of the sword nailed down, right? So let's see. This is how it looks. This is just a flat plane at this moment. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to give it some depth. Okay. So let me pull this outwards. Let me pull this out. Keep these vertices over here, or let's just pull it out non-uniformly. So यहाँ से लेके यहाँ तक the handle is there, so it's going to come out perhaps this much, and then यहाँ से लेके यहाँ तक it's the blade of the sword, so it's going to come out a little more, I think. And let's even yeah. So that's how I gave it a little bit of depth. And now this part is remaining, which is the hilt of the sword. The hilt of the sword is remaining, right? So let's also pull it outwards, something like this. Excellent. Now let's mirror this because the sword only has one side at this moment. So we have this X mirror going on. We have this sort of Y mirror going on. We also want an X mirror going on, right? So I'm going to add another mirror which will mirror the sword on the other side like this, right? So now we can see there are some connectivity issues. It's not connecting properly. So I'm going to turn on clipping, and after that, I'm going to sort of pull this in, pull all of this in so that the sword connects properly. So wherever I see gaps, I'm going to close them. Just checking for gaps. If I have forgotten any gaps, just checking for that. Okay, I don't think there's any more gaps left. I think the only gap is going to be beneath the hilt of the sword over here because we never filled it really. So let's add something E4 extrude over here and merge at center. Let's merge the vertex and we have this. And that's it. Now there's no more gaps inside of this wall. So this is the 3D model which is ready for us. We can do a little more cleanup in this if we want. So I don't want this part to be as chunky. So I'm going to thin it up a little bit. So I wanted it to be something like that. Yeah. Okay, so that's our sword. Let me apply auto smooth on it to see how it looks when it is smoothened out. So this is the basic shape of the sword, right? Uh, let's go out and see. So now if you look over here, these shapes, currently what we're doing is we're not going too much in depth with 3D modeling. This is a shape that we could have modeled if we liked. It's not too hard, but I have to show the entire process to you, entire 3D process to you, right? I have to do the model, then unwrap, and then texture as well. So if I had a little more time, I could have modeled this structure in between, this eye in between, but we're still going to do it. We're going to do it in a different manner. So instead of modeling it, and this is how game art is done. This is how hand painted art styles are done. Instead of modeling something, what you do is you sort of texture it in. So some details which are not 3D, some details which are not uh, uh, like physical, you just paint them and texture them hand paintedly. Okay, so this part is going to come, this eye is going to come, but I'm going to paint them instead of model them. Okay, so let's take this forward. Let's take this forward. Now I'm going to unwrap this, and I'm again going to use quite a shortcut because again I have to do this within an hour, right? And only have 30 minutes left almost. So I'm going to use a shortcut. Okay, so I'm only going to unwrap one side of my sword, right? I'm only going to unwrap one side of the sword. I'm not, so basically the sword has four sides at this moment. If I turn my mirror off, you can see. So this is the only thing that we have modeled. We have only modeled this much, right? And then we duplicated it over here, and then we duplicated it once again over here. So if you think of, it has four sides, we only made one side and we duplicated to create the other two sides, right? So I am going to take a shortcut. I'm going to unwrap and texture only one quarter of this sword, right? So how will that work? Let's see. And again, you have to take these shortcuts as an artist. That is your life, basically, taking these shortcuts and doing the work quickly as possible. So what I did is I went to edit mode. Firstly, you were in the layout. When you're doing the 3D modeling, you're in the layouts panel, right? Then when you're unwrapping, you go to the UV editing panel. So when you want to unwrap, come out of the layout panel and click on the UV editing panel. So now in the UV editing panel, click the object जिसकी आपको unwrapping करनी है. Go to the edit mode, press A to select all, and U to unwrap, and it will give you an auto unwrap. Okay, so now unwrapping is a little more, not a little more, unwrapping is a lot more complex than this, because this is a very simple straight object. We get a very simple unwrap, but sometimes we have more complex objects, right? And when we have more complex objects, we have to add something called seams while unwrapping. Now I'm not doing a masterclass on unwrapping. That would be some other time. So I'm not going to go too much in depth on how unwrapping is actually done. But yes, currently for now, I just go to the edit mode, press A to select all, U and unwrap, and Blender gives me an auto unwrap. So auto unwrap will only work for simpler objects. Once you start working with more complex 3D models, auto unwrap will not work. You will have to add scenes to guide the auto unwrap. Okay. So I now need to clean this up, and I now need to fix this unwrap. Okay. So you can see the lines are all twisty and bendy. So I just select everything over here, S, Y, 0. Okay, sorry, S, X, and 0. And scale everything in the X axis for 0. That means make it flat. So if I see any more irregularities in the unwrap, I'm going to fix that as well. Okay. I'm just cleaning up, I'm just aligning everything properly at this point. Okay. It's very important to align everything correctly so that your 3D model, uh, if you don't unwrap, if you don't align the unwrap properly, your textures are going to stretch. So what you paint is going to be something different, and what you see on the model is going to be something different if you don't align it properly, basically. जहाँ जहाँ पे मुझे टेढ़ी लाइंस दिख रही है, मैं उन्हें सीधी कर रहा हूँ अभी. A lot of people get confused or get afraid of unwrapping. I have seen a lot of people say that unwrapping sir बहुत boring है. A lot of my colleagues, a lot of my students, they are really really afraid, really really hesitant कि unwrapping पसंद नहीं है, unwrapping से डर लगता है and everything. But it's not really that. And I used to be similar when I was a student. I was quite hesitant of unwrapping. I was like, ये क्या है? And my teacher used to tell me that unwrapping is actually fun. It is actually puzzle solving. And I used to be like, what the hell? What is she saying? But now I actually find it true. Once you give it a little bit of, just a little bit of time to unwrapping, you will find that it's very much like puzzle solving, playing a game. It's not as tedious. It's the most fun part actually. So now what you do with this unwrap, you have this UV unwrap, you press A to select everything, and then you come to the UV tab, and then click on something called export UV layout. Click on this, and then decide the location where you want to export it. Rename it. I will call this sword UV, right? Call this sword UV, and I export this, right? So now let's come out of Blender, and time to go to Photoshop. Mm, you can also texture the entire thing within Blender. It's also possible to texture the entire thing within Blender. Uh, I just want to show you both the methods. We still have around 15 minutes left for this session to be over. So I'll sort of try to show you both the ways actually, if I have enough time. So I'll just drag the unwrap. I'll just drag the unwrap to Photoshop. Yeah. And once you do this, rename it. Remember to name your layers. It's a very good habit to name your layers. Keep everything organized. Lock it as soon as you come here. Lock the layer so that you don't end up drawing on this unwrap layer, right? You don't want to mess the unwrap layer up. Then take a background layer beneath this. Take a 50% gray background layer beneath this, something like this. Let's call this BG. Let's also lock the background layer so we don't end up painting on the background layer by mistake. We want to paint on the correct layers, right? Now set this unwrap to multiply. You can reduce or increase its opacity as you like. I like to keep the opacity as at 50 after setting the multiply, but this is personal. This is however you prefer to do it, do it. Now let's actually start painting the sword. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the concept art over here so that I have the reference of what I'm doing, what I'm supposed to do. So yeah, this is my reference before I start painting. Name your layers always, guys. It's a very good habit. If you don't name your layers, you will find yourself falling in trouble someday. Okay. I'm going to use the vertical symmetry tool, and I'm going to set it right over here. Okay. And next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of press W and get the magic wand tool, go to the UV layer, click once like this. So I get a selection, right? Now I have selected everything which is outside. I've selected everything which is outside of the sword. You can see when I use the paint bucket, everything outside is selected. Now I want to get the selection of everything that is inside. So after I press W, select everything outside on the UV layer. I'm going to press Control Shift and I to invert the selection. And now the selection is giving me everything inside, right? Which is what we wanted. Now I want to expand this. So I'll go select, modify, and expand. And I'll expand this by, let's say, at least 4 pixels, something like this. I think let's expand it a little more, expanded by 4 more pixels, and that is where we will fill this color. And let's lock this once again, sword color, let's lock it. And now I'll start coloring. Now I'll actually start coloring. Before you start coloring, if you want, just take some references. It's always good to have some references. Now I don't have a lot of references collected already, so let's very quickly go to Pinterest. So now the additional reference which I'm collecting, the concept art is already there, the design is already done, but how I'm going to color it, right? The manner in which I'm going to color it. So for that, I'm taking these reference. So this is my reference for the sort of coloring style or the art style. Now it takes a lot of time if you want to make a hand painted sword in sort of in a style similar to this. It will take a lot of time. We only have like around 10 minutes left now. So obviously I'm not going to be able to go in this level of detail, but I'll stretch it as much as I can, right? So let's do it. Let's start. I'll pick the colors from over here. So that is the blade of our sword, right? Now let's do the golden part, which is this over here. Let's actually turn off the symmetry for now. It's disturbing us quite a lot. Just give me a moment. There's someone at the door. Sorry about that. Excellent. The gas cylinder is over here, right when I'm doing the stream. Sorry about that, guys. Let's get back to it. What you can also do is you can also do it on a new layer. So let's say I have this base color for the sword. I have this base color for the sword. I'll just fill that in. I'll just fill that in something like this, and then I'll have the base color for the handle. And now I don't want my handle to be blue. I want it to be something like a red, something like this. So I'll paint that over there. Paint that over there like that. And now what I'll do is I'll take a new layer. I'll take another layer on top of which I will add the golden parts of this sword, right? So this is sword color. Let's have sword color 2. And then on this, I'll add the golden parts. So the golden parts are going to be, for me, the golden parts are going to be these. So I'm not sure it's very clear to you. The colors contrast, I should increase the contrast of the colors so that it's very easily visible, I guess. So I think now it will be very easily visible now that I've increased the saturation and darkness. Let's also have this over here. Now I have this mask. I have this mask for the blade, and then I have the mask for the handle. We really have a little, like, 7 minutes left, so I'll very quickly start shading this and adding some finer details. Okay, so I'll go back to the sword color. On top of it, I'll add the shadow layer. I like to go from shadows to highlights, so I'll switch to a soft brush right now, soft brush, and then I'll pick a darker sort of shadowy color over here for the sword, and then I'll start sort of painting over there. Now I want to show the sharpness of the sword, right? So for that also I'll try to do something. But before that, let's add these patterns. So if you look over there, there are a few patterns upon the sword. I want to add them. I don't want to disturb the shadows, so I'll add the patterns on another layer entirely. So there's something like that. Then there's something like that. Then there's something like, yeah, something like that. And then there's something like that. So these are the patterns that I had created. Now I have to give them depth. Now they are looking very flat at this moment, so I also have to give them depth if I'm making them, right? So I'm just going to sort of soften them in some places firstly. थोड़ा soften कर लूँगा इन्हें मैं. And after that is done, after the softening is done, I'm actually going to add the highlights. So if I only add the shadows, it's going to look very, very flat. So now it's the time to add the highlights upon it. And see how I give it some depth. The UV layer is distracting me, so I'm going to reduce the opacity of the UV layer. Let's come back to the patterns and add the highlight. See, If you want, you can also do the highlight on another layer to keep it more organized. So that's how I add some depth to it. Again, I'm not polishing it very much because we also have a time constraint at this moment. This is sort of like a rough sketch for me, what I'm showing to you right now. There's a lot of polish that is actually lacking to this. Sort of give a sharp sort of sharpness effect, depth effect over here. Or let's just do that on the entire thing. And then reduce the set it to screen and reduce the opacity for it. So now this is sort of your depth for the height of the sword. So if you remember the 3D model, there was a line in between. There was a crest. So this is the depth, this is the sharpness, the highlight we're showing to signify that crest basically. And then there was also a sharpness over there. On the edge there was a sharpness, so we'll have to add a few more lines for that effect. Again, this is very rough, very unpolished work for now. Remember, I'm sort of doing it in within like I took about 15 less than 15 minutes to texture this. Started, we're almost at the end of the time now. So this is very rough work for me. Just finished the blade of the sword, sort of, not exactly, but we'll call it done for now. Okay. And then we'll also do the handle and the other parts. So let's start with that. Let's do the shadows first. So I'll pick a darker color for the shadows, something like that. And I'll sort of add a gradient like that. Then I'll go to the patterns and I'll pick a lighter color and I'll start adding the patterns. If you want, you can sort of soften them on one side. If you think they are being too flat, soften them on one side. And then again, take the darker color and So we'll call the handle done. It's nowhere near done actually, but we'll call it done because we need to hurry up. So let's go to the golden part for now, which was over here. Let's add shadows to that. Let's take the shadow color from over here, pick the shadow color from over here. Let's add the lines that we wanted. So we want this line, we want this line, and then we want this line over here, and then we want an eye over here, right? We want an eye over here. So we want this line and this line. So let's come to the bottom part. Okay, we have no lines at no major lines at the bottom part of the sword. That's good. Let's add a gradient on top of this. First, let's add some shadows like that. We only had made the lines for now, but let's also add the shadows. So gradient like that would work. Then let me also make a selection, something like that. Okay, most important thing, remember to press Ctrl S and save the file from time to time before it crashes. Okay, so I'll just save this on the desktop for now and call this sword. Yeah. I'm really quickly shading this at this moment. And I think that is sort of enough shadows for now. Let's quickly move towards the highlights. Again, these are nowhere near perfect. These are nowhere near satisfactory for me even. But we have a time constraint, so we are not going to go too much in depth. Okay. So let's move on towards the highlights. Start adding. So let's add some final touches to this and wrap it up really quick. Okay. So now the eyeball is the only thing which is remaining. Let's really quickly do that as well. And let's call it done. So now this is again nowhere near finished for me, but we'll move on. Okay. So I'll turn the UV layer off. Remember to turn the UV layer off before you export, okay? And then I'm going to export this, save this image. I'll save it on my desktop itself as sword UV, sword texture actually. Okay. And we are ready to take this to Blender. So what I'll do is I'll just add a material over here, drag the image that we just saved, plug it in like this, and ta-da! We have this sword which is hand painted. We have this hand painted sword ready, right? Again, the level of polish is not there because we have done the model, the unwrapping and the texturing all within an hour. I'm really surprised. I was not sure if I will be able to manage it within the hour, okay? But I'm really surprised that I managed to do it. The level of polish again is not satisfactory for me. For a beginner artist, it's good. For a junior artist, if they make something like this, it will be good. But for the amount of experience I have, this something like this is not satisfactory for me. But again, I can polish it further if I have time. Okay. So now let's export this FBX file. Let's export this word and make it ready. Let's prepare for moving it to Unreal. Okay. So I'll export as FBX. Again, save this on desktop as Sword FBX. We already have the texture. So now we have exported the FBX files, and I'll leave this hanging for you guys to see, and I'll answer a few questions I see in the chat box until our Unreal guy comes and he prepares to load this inside of the game engine if he is here, right?
All right, guys. So hope you like that. That was pretty cool, right? Building a game object from scratch. And the idea of this class is to actually show you the entire process of taking a concept, building it, and putting it inside the game. So now, should I get Adi on?
If Adi is in the backstage, please get him
He's
on.
there. He's there.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm here.
excellent.
Hi, Rahul sir. Hi, Afyat.
What's
Hi
up?
Adi.
What's
Hi Adi.
up?
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Afyat, can you share me the texture and the FBX
Just give
file?
me a moment. I'm sharing the texture and the FBX file with you on your Discord.
Yep, that
I'm
would be
just
perfect.
trying to locate it. My desktop is too cluttered these days.
Yeah, yeah, it happens.
Okay. Yes. So I'll send you the files until you prepare to load them inside of the game engine. I'll answer a few
Game
questions
engine
for
is
you
ready.
guys.
Perfect. I got the file.
All Papa is saying, why not do this in the Painter where the 3D model is accessible? So uh, you can actually do it in Painter, but we can also do it in Blender itself. So if I go to Blender, if I click over here and if I go to the tab called Texture Paint tab, right? I've come to the Texture Paint tab right now. And now I
Afia,
can, yes,
can you share the texture file also at the time while you're explaining here?
I have shared the texture file. Yes,
You have also. Okay, I can
yeah, yeah.
only see sword
I have
FPX
shared
actually.
the FBX and the texture along with it. You cannot see it.
No, it is not.
Let me upload it once again.
Yeah, just do that.
Did you receive the file?
Yep, I got it now. Perfect.
Excellent. So even within, I don't even need to go to Substance Painter. Even within Blender, there is a tab called the Texture Paint tab, over where I can actually take my brush, pick any color I want on my brush, and I can start painting on the model directly. So if you see, now I can paint on the model directly. So जो मैंने अभी आपको Photoshop में करके बताया, जो इस sword की painting मैंने Photoshop में करी, वही चीज़, the same thing I could have also done within Blender. So as I told you guys, there's two three different types of modeling. There's the low poly modeling, mid poly, and then the high poly or hyper realistic, right? Three types of modeling. But even within these three types, there are many different approaches. Do you start with a block? Do you start with NURBS? Do you start with vertices? There are different approaches. So similarly, even within texturing, you have a few options. If you prefer, you can do it in Painter. If you prefer, I actually wanted to show you guys how to like texture paint in Blender. मैं चाहता था कि मैं Photoshop में लेके भी ना जाऊँ file, and I do the entire texturing in Blender. But that would have taken a little longer. If I had tried to do that, it would have taken around 2 hours. So Photoshop is a little faster for me. But if you don't know Photoshop, if you don't want to learn Photoshop, you can exactly do this entire thing within Blender itself. Okay.
Okay, so should I share the screen if you are done, Afia?
Let me stop sharing mine.
Yeah,
I'll just stop my cam as well if you're sharing a screen.
sure. Uh, okay, is my screen visible?
I think
Hello.
someone needs to allow your screen. Yes.
Okay, is it visible now?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. So I have taken the basic map of Unreal, the first thing anyone would see if they're starting the Unreal program. Right. So what I will do is I have already imported the sword static mesh and texture just so that everyone can see. I will import it again. Here's the sword FPX, which I will take. I will not import any texture with it. I will do not create any material. Everything is as it is. And here is my sword FPX. Perfect. Now I'll also import the texture. Now here is my texture also. Let's just see how sword is looking here. And it's looking pretty good. Nice one, Afiyat. Now let me
Okay,
just create a.
it's working properly?
It is working properly. So if you're seeing,
Excellent.
basically this is because the normals are not right, but it can be fixed in Unreal
Right.
itself.
Yeah,
So
I actually forgot to flip the normals. I actually
yeah,
noticed the normals are messed up, but I forgot to flip them before sending it to you.
no issue. It can be fixed in Unreal
Yeah,
itself. So I will just create a
excellent.
material out of this texture by right clicking and create material. Let me just name it sword. Let's go material. And here I will just say two-sided. Just to make sure that everything goes right, I will give it a UV data as well as I will multiply our node with our custom parameters so that I can change it. I will also play with roughness and metallic. I will say let me just give the roughness 0.5 and metallic 1 as it is a sword. Because we don't have any normal map right now, I will not use it. What I will do is I will just create a material instance out of it, and let me just plug it here. So here is our sword. Let's just play with it a little bit to see if we
Adi,
can.
if it is possible, you can, if there's a metallic shader, if there's a metallic shader, if you
There's a
can add
metallic
some
shader.
metalness to this,
Yeah, I'm doing
within the
it.
material properties.
Let me just play with this one, and I will add metallic shader also. Let me first add this with the character so that they can see how it looks with character also.
Even I want to see how it looks.
Yeah,
Meanwhile,
let's
I'll just answer a few questions that I see over here.
perfect.
Is some Arjit Das is asking, क्या हम 3D artist और animator एक साथ बन सकते हैं? Yes, Arjit Das, you can become a 3D artist and an animator at the same time. 3D artist and 3D animator. 3D artist and 2D animator बहुत ही अलग हो जाएगा, but 3D artist and 3D animator you can, yes, do that both at the same time. You can do that even in the gaming industry, not just the, and if you want to create animated short films and everything, that is good, but even within the gaming industry there is requirement for 3D animators and artists. Okay.
So here is my socket through which
All right.
I can add my sword.
Stock Bro is asking about the mentors. There's a link actually, and you can join the call. You can join a call and where you can ask all the doubts you have regarding G2M, right? And in the art department, within the art department, I'm not the only mentor. So I see a lot of people asking about Maya. Why are we not learning Maya? Do we want to learn Maya? So I specialize in Blender. That is, every artist has their own preferred softwares. For me, I specialize in Blender. Most of the work I have done in the industry has been in Blender. But if you want to learn Maya, we have one more mentor who specializes in Maya. So it's like you're covered. If you come to G2M, you're covered like that. Okay. So we have a person who is expert in Maya, modeling, texturing, rigging, animation, everything included. Okay.
Let me just remove the animation
And
of it.
again, Blender is quite commonly used unless you're talking about the top AAA studios. Blender is used in most of the mid cap and small studios as well. It is also very ideal for some students actually want to start their own studio, their own indie studio. So it's also ideal for them because they don't have to pay the licensing fee and everything. There's a lot more content you can learn. uh, for example, if you're using Maya, sculpting ke liye you will need ZBrush, texturing ke liye you will need Substance Painter. But in Blender you can do the sculpting in one place, you can do the texturing in one place. So it's like you don't need five different softwares basically. V is saying there's no harm in having separate meshes. Apart from the poly count, yes, the poly count is a big deal. In the gaming industry, poly count is actually a big deal. Even if you can say like 4 5 polys, it's like we are very cheap, we are very कंजूस. 3D artists are very कंजूस. हम बहुत ज़्यादा poly की बचत करने की कोशिश करते हैं. And there's pros and cons to both of them. There's pros and cons to both. Like I said, अभी मेरे को जल्दी जल्दी करना था. I wanted to finish it fast, so I made one single mesh. But I also prefer to have 2 3 different meshes actually. Aryan is asking how did I select the entire. You just hold Alt and then click on the edge, so it will select the entire edge loop for you, Aryan.
So I have aligned my sword accordingly.
Again, as I said, a lot of people asking about Maya. We actually have a mentor who specializes in Maya. But again, Blender also is faster. So let's say अभी जो मैंने master class करा Blender के अंदर, I created the model, I unwrapped, I textured. If I wanted to do the same thing in Maya, ये 1 घंटे में नहीं हो पाता, you know, because now again there's no option to sculpt in Maya. There's no option to paint, texture paint within Maya. Blender के अंदर I can texture paint actually directly यहाँ पर. So Maya is actually specialized in rigging and animation. Maya is actually a rigging and animation specialized software. People use it for modeling. There's a lot of modeling tools available, but its specialization lies in rigging and animation. For example, Photoshop. Photoshop is actually photo editing software. It's not a digital painting software. It's a photo editing software. बट उसके अंदर बहुत सारे टूल्स होने की वजह से people use it for photo for painting, right? But if you talk about a dedicated painting software, it's going to be Krita, right? It's looking amazing यार. इतना मतलब मेरे को यकीन नहीं हो रहा है कि ये 1 घंटे के अंदर अंदर बन गया था.
Plus, if you have uh, made the pivot correct now, it would have been
हाँ,
quite like 1 minute task to
हाँ,
assign it. Because
पिवट
pivot right
थोड़ा
now is a little bit
पिवट
away from the.
रिसेंटर कर देता मैं यार. पिवट रिसेंटर करना तो इजी काम था. मुझे बोल देते तुम पिवट चेंज कर
It's
दो.
fine. Like you were solving that out, so I
हाँ,
thought let's just do it here only.
yeah.
Right. Let me just turn on the animation and play. So as you can see right now,
Do we
our
have a strike animation? Do we have a strike animation?
um,
No, right?
no, not right now.
Okay,
But definitely on
okay,
the
okay.
next masterclass, what we can do is we
Uh-huh.
can make a whole kind of environment. You are doing environment, and then we can make a strike animation itself.
Yeah.
But
This is
yeah,
so cool, guys. I had this idea for this class, and I was like, "Pata nahi kar payenge ki nahi," but we did it, right? We managed within half an hour. We managed to actually um, next time, you know what we should do? We should actually have someone sketch it. We should take like a poll from the audience
yeah,
among what they want, and they should meet actually
We can
sketch
make the
that out.
concept art. We can make the
We can make
concept
the
art live.
concept. We can make it faster because like now that you know how much time it takes, I think we can get faster and faster at this. But this is fantastic. Thank you so much, Adi, and thank you so much, Afiat. Afiat and Adi. I
Thank you so
get
much. Thank you
confused
so
between
much.
two guys. That was awesome. And Afiat, thank you. You're not well, so thank you so much for coming for this class. And Adi, brilliant stuff, both of you guys. So thank you, guys. You can stop sharing your screen.
Thank you.
yeah,
Guys, that's it from today. If you guys are interested in learning from these really awesome mentors, if you're interested in learning game art, if you're interested in learning Unreal from these very mentors, this is how they teach, right? This is how they teach. This is a teaching methodology. It's very, very hands on, no doubt. No question goes unanswered, you know. So if you want to join up, apply for the program. We'll have an interview with you, and if you're approved, then you can actually join our mentorship program, and you can learn all this stuff. The link is in the description of this video. You know where to find me. gamertomaker.in.com, whatever. Also follow me on Instagram. Follow, subscribe to this channel, and we will see you guys soon. And if you want to know about when the portfolio review is going to happen, just follow me on Instagram and keep a watch on my timeline, and you will know when that is going to happen. Okay. So, thank you guys so much for being here this Sunday morning. Take care, and I will see you guys around. Let's go.